long-term, big picture here, moving ahead this season, can Julius Randle be that number 2? We know Brunson is a legitimate superstar. I don't care what anybody says about his height and all that stuff. We know Brunson is a legit 1. Can Julius Randle be the number 2? I believe he is. I know he's the number 2 on this Knicks team, but I believe he can be a number 2 on this championship Knicks team with the other moves around it. But Randle, to me, is a legit number 2 star.
You know, unlike a lot of people, I never stopped watching the Knicks, even when they gave you no reason to watch. I mean, talking 23, 25 wins, just an atrocity. So I really appreciate where they are and what they've given us so far. And this team is good. There's no doubt this team is good. Sal, the problem is you can't win with Randle as the number 2. You can't. I wish I could agree with you. I can't. There was a sequence last night. Knicks are up by a point. It's 101-100. A lot of spirited plays, like getting loose balls, and OG was making buckets, and Hart was doing stuff, and Randle made plays. So did Brunson, both at 30. But there's a sequence. Knicks are up a point. Randle comes steamrolling down the court. They're like pounding that strong lefty dribble. Sal, he runs right at 3 people.
That's a signature move.
Yes, this is actually in clutch moments. He spins away from 1 defender and then spins right into 2. Gets the ball stripped, and he commits a foul. Julius Randle, for the first 40-something minutes of the game, is awesome. His ticker is strong. You know, he scores. He's an all-star. He's
right.
He's all-NBA.
He's got 3 out of the last 4 years.
No doubt.
Assuming he's an all-star this season.
Problem is, you win championships really inside of the final few minutes. Yeah. And I just don't trust him.
But he's not the number 1. He was the number 1. Like, the argument against Randle, we went over this a little bit yesterday. The argument against Randle is, well, what's he done in the postseason? Yeah, okay, well, the first year, he was the number 1. I didn't say he's the number 1 superstar. I said he's number 2 on a championship team. With Jalen Brunson, Randle is pushed back to 2. So forget what happened against Atlanta a few years ago in the first round of the postseason, where Randle, by the way, himself was an all-star and took that Knicks team to the postseason, to a 4 seed. Something that Brunson has not even done yet. Now, I'm not saying he's better, obviously, but I'm just saying, think about what Randle did in isolation. Now he's the number 2 with a legitimate point guard, and we saw Randle in the postseason last year. By the way, Brunson struggled too in the postseason last year, but we saw Randle struggle. He had ankle issues. He had to have surgery after the year. Can Julius Randle be a number 2 to the legitimate star in Jalen Brunson on a team that can win a championship? I believe he can.
I don't know if I want to be wrong about anything more than this. I don't see it. There's such a drop, and it's a pressure thing. Like, a lot of these things I'm going to give you a couple of numbers. I'm not going to bombard you, but I need to illuminate one thing. But we can quantify most things. We can, right? So let me quantify this. He's played 639 regular season games. He shoots 47%, 33% from downtown, 75% from the stripe. Okay. Can you explain to me why in the playoff games, and not just a couple of years ago against the Hawks, all of them.
Can we throw that one out, though? Because
I'll throw it out for you, but it's still bad.
Because,
I'll throw it out for you.
You agree, and I'll meet you in the middle and then say, okay, I won't use the ankle as an excuse last year.
I'll throw it out for you. He had nothing. It was Nerlens Noel. It was Burks. I got you on that. I'll throw that out.
Reggie Bullock. I mean, come on.
Understood. Yeah. Peyton, I think.
Yeah, right. Alfred Payton.
34%. Suddenly he shoots. Instead of 47, he's 34.
Major drop off. Right.
Instead of 33, he's 27. Now, I'm gonna throw that out. I'm gonna forget about what went down with the Hawks. Pandemic, weird. I appreciate it.
Totally different team, totally different role.
So last year against the Cavaliers, even though they won, he had a 3 for 15 game. He had an 8 for 20 game. He had a 7 for 20 game. He had a 3 for 10 game, and he had a 5 and a 6 turnover game. They somehow won. Okay, against the Heat, he had a 3 for 14 game, a 4 for 15 game, a 6, a 4, and a 4 turnover game. I used the word quantify before because we can quantify everything in sport statistically. I can't quantify what happens to this guy when the pressure gets ratcheted up. He changes. He gets frenetic. He speeds up. And he's 30. He's going to be 30.
He does speed it up.
He's not going to change.
Right.
He's not 24. He's a hell of a player. And I love that I mean this. I love that he is on the Knicks. I love it. But he's not going to change, dude.
Right, but he doesn't have to
Yes, he
as
does.
a number 2.
No, your number 2 does.
No, he doesn't.
Were you sitting there with Kobe and Shaq saying,
Kobe and
you
Shaq,
can't get the ball to Shaq. I'm worried about that.
Not everybody's Kobe and
How
Shaq
about Bert and McHale?
or Michael and
How
Scotty.
about Magic and Kareem?
I never
How
said
about
he's a
Scotty
Hall
and
of-
Michael?
Look, he could be a number 2 on a championship team. They have to have the right pieces around him. Anunoby is a good start for that. They need to add a legitimate 2 guard, which would be nice to see, whether it's DeRozan, whether it's Murray, which would be the dream.
Yeah.
Obviously, had some depth on the bench. Randle in those spots doesn't have to be the guy like he was in the first series against Atlanta, like he was last year at certain times. If Brunson is the legit number 1,
And
which
he is, I'm with you on that.
And they have other pieces around him that are better than R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly. You talk about a drop-off in postseason, or from regular season to postseason. Emmanuel Quickly was a guy who struggled mightily last year after being arguably the best sixth man of the year. He goes out there and does nothing in the postseason. So Randle, to me, with the other pieces around, can be the second best player on this team, which could be a championship team.
Okay, so as you say that, and I don't agree, and we'll get these calls, 877-337-6666. Why are we not sitting here saying that about, Jokic and Murray, or Tatum and Jaylen Brown? Like, there's a
People don't talk about Murray, they talk about Jokic.
Yeah, but
Murray's like the afterthought. He's a great player.
But I'm saying he's their number 2. They won the championship.
Right.
See, the way I like the construction, and I love the direction. There's assets. There's manageable contracts. The Knicks are out of the abyss, and the Knicks matter, and I don't want to be too greedy, and I certainly don't want to seem unappreciative. But the problem, I think, fundamentally with this team, this part we know, if Randle's your 1, you're not good enough.
Right.
If Randle's your 2, in my opinion, you're not good enough to win a championship. As you suggested, if he goes down to that 3rd spot, now he's not getting the ball enough, and now his skill is wasted.
No, I'm not saying go down to the 3rd spot. I'm just saying
But he's got to for them to win
if
a championship.
If Murray is here, Randle is still the second best player on the team.
If Jamal Murray's here?
No. Murray from Atlanta.
DeJounte Murray?
Yeah.
I don't know if I even love that match. I don't want to get
Right.
bogged down with that because I don't know if Brunson and Murray really
I'm
work.
saying they need to upgrade 2 guard. DeMar DeRozan. Randle's
well,
still the second best.
DeRozan's 30. DeRozan's different, different stage. I think DeRozan would be good.
They're not going to get a player that's better than Randle. That's my argument.
I understand that, but they might get somebody who's a better fit when it matters late. This guy turns into a crazy person. It's irrefutable. I don't know a Knicks fan that doesn't get worried watching this guy with a minute to go.
But it's
everybody's
different.
worried.
It's different now.
It's not different for me.
Well, he's had one postseason that we're throwing out.
No, I'm throwing that out. I moved on from that.
And then last year, there was the ankle issue. There were other guys not doing their jobs. To me, this is going to be the telling season. For the Knicks to break through and get to an NBA Finals, certainly get to an Eastern Conference Finals, but maybe even an NBA Finals, Randle has to be the guy that he's been in the regular season 3 of the last 4 years in the postseason for the first time. Because we haven't seen it yet.
And you think he'll be that guy?
I do. That's
based
the difference.
on what, though? Hope? Outside of hope? Honestly. Outside of hope.
Based on what he's done in the regular season, based on Brunson emerging as the number 1, based on Anunoby being the best 3 that they've had.
I love him.
And based on them building up the rest of the team to a point where this is the best team that they've had with Randle here. And he fits best as a number 2. Now, that also doesn't mean that I want him to be the number 2 scoring option with 5 seconds on the line. If Brunson's getting double teamed,
well, then he's not a real 2.
Oh no,
but that's a contradiction. How do you have your number? If you're number
second
1,
best player on the team, he's their second best player.
But you don't want him taking the shot with 5 seconds to go. What kind of number 2 is that?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
You're not forcing him. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm just saying
you don't trust it though. Let's get to the root of the concern. You don't trust him with the ball with 5. I don't.
I'm saying that there are other guys that can make that shot. To me, as long as you have the number 1, you're okay with a little bit lesser number 2.
Yeah.
And Julius Randle as a number 2 is better than a lot of other teams.
Okay, now let me just push back an inch on this because I'm not going to battle that Brunson's a 1. He's a 1. He's a superstar. I don't care what anybody says.
Well, a lot of people don't think that's the case,
I don't care
but they're wrong.
That's fine. They're entitled to their wrong opinion.
Right.
But I have to point this out. Like, you can be a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying with Brunson, but the baseball theme. You can be a Hall of Famer, but be a lower tier Hall of Famer. Jalen Brunson can be a superstar, but a lower level superstar, which means the importance of the number 2 is magnified. And that's where the Knicks are missing it. They're just, you can see his brain, his wheels churning, the pump fakes, the jab steps, jumping with no one to pass to, and then flinging it to the corner, gets deflected, somehow gets to Anunoby. Like, I've seen this a lot. And I love the guy. I'm more of a Randle fan than Carmelo, times 100. I appreciate what this man has done for the New York Knicks. He wanted to come here. He is the dog. But if he's your 2, you can't win the championship.
BT and Sal on the Fan. Our friends at Town Fair Tire remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Steve is in Massapequa. What's up, Steve?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
How are you, Steve?
Hey, Steve.
Good. I'm so sick of all the Randle hate coming from the media. I think he's averaging 24, 9, and 7. He made big play after big play at the end of that game. And we want to talk about his one turnover. The guy had changed the trajectory of this franchise when he signed here.
Yeah.
He had a terrible team when he lost to the Hawks in the playoffs. He was hurt last year. I think he's going to be a totally different guy this year. He puts up huge numbers. He's a dog. He's a guy you want on your side. I just don't understand the constant criticism.
Well, first of all, it's not constant on this show, Steve, and thanks for the call. To be fair, we always laud Randle. This is just a deeper dive into, because the Knicks are going to win 50-something games.
We're talking about championship.
Yes.
Can they win a championship with Randle as their second best player? I believe they can.
Yeah, I don't. It's not like, oh, should they have given him the extension? Oh, is he really an all-star? No, those things are check. Dude, Sal and I don't want to speak for Sal, but I know your answer, so I will hear. Do we both value him more than Carmelo? Check. I mean, there's so many favorable things with Julius Randle, but then you watch him play late, and it's just it looks different. You know,
I think you could say the same thing about Carmelo. You referenced Carmelo, right? And he was legit their number one, their best player, the number one scoring option. How was he down the stretch of these games? And you could say, well, maybe he didn't have somebody else as a number 2. But I watched Carmelo fumble it away, take horrible shots, make bad decisions.
That's why I'm not a fan.
But he was their number 1. So
yeah, I know.
Randle as their second best option to me, I can live with. Look, the turnovers of Manning. Guess what? If he didn't do that, he'd be a number 1. I mean, the guy. What more do you want from him? He's an All-Star 3 out of the last 4 years. If he didn't turn the ball over, he'd be number 1.
He might be first team All NBA often. But that is but that's something that is not.
He's improved his shooting. He's got an inside game and outside.
He's improved everything. Do you think he's going to change? He's going to be 30. Do you think that the scary part of his game is going to get cleaned up suddenly?
What I think the difference is,
because I don't.
I'm not
against a real good defense with good coaching and scouting and anticipation. Oh, here's Randle's tendencies. He's going to roll this way. He's going to reverse the ball to the corner. He's going to pump fake and just lower his shoulder. These are things great coaches and astute teams will magnify.
Right. The difference is you have a much better team now around him. A legitimate superstar in Jalen Brunson, a legit third best player that fits much better than anything else with Anunoby. You know, eventually you hope that they add some depth to this bench and potentially even a better 2-guard. To me, those are things that Randle hasn't had the luxury of having around him, which is why I think he'll thrive this postseason. Kyle is calling from West Orange, New Jersey. What's up, Kyle?
What's up, fellas? This is Kyle, the bald and sexy. What's up, fellas?
How are you, Kyle?
Join the club. That's 3 of us.
That's right, bald and sexy. That's us, man. I used to call you when you had Tiki there and Sal. I used to call you listen, Sal, look, I love Julius Randle. Mm-hmm. I love how he plays. I love the way this Knicks team is going right now. Why? Because they got OG. They got a scorer, a guy that can score. So you see what this team has become since they added that. So, every time I'm watching the game last night, and every time I see Julius, my man, get the ball and bring it up court, I'm going, pass it.
Yep.
Pass it. Because I'm looking for a strip. I'm looking for him to lose the ball, bounce it off his foot, and also how many times do I got to see him drive into traffic and then dish it out to somebody that's hardly even there? A lot of guys are recovering from his mistakes and his sloppy ball play.
Yeah.
I
what
agree.
I'm saying is that
yet all you Knicks fans, and yet all you Knicks fans love Donovan Mitchell and want him. How is he in the postseason? And how's he down the stretch of some of these games? Turning the ball over or not being able to get it done?
No. I'm not saying I wanted Donovan back in the day.
Yeah.
All right, because I know somebody that knows his father.
Mm-hmm.
However, with this team right here, if we had a guy that can pull up, and one thing, look, Julius Randle's game, since I've watched him, has improved.
Yes.
He's on the baseline more. He's kind of rocking it. He's kind of shaking and baking, and then drop step and off the glass a little bit. I love that play. That's that Bernard play. Play like Bernard. You hear me?
Yeah.
But what does he do? Can you be consistent? Like we've seen a lot of other guys do. They're not consistent.
Kyle, he's been an all-star, and thank you for the call.
Thank
3
you,
out of 4 seasons. I don't know how much more consistent you could be. The issue you have, and BT brought this up, is in the postseason. You need and want Julius Randle to do what he's done in the regular season in the postseason. You could live with some of the turnovers. Now, obviously, down the stretch in a tie game or something, you can't because it's going to cost you the game, which is why you better thank goodness that you have Jalen Brunson as the number one and some other options as well. However, you'll live with it if you get regular season Randle in the postseason. That is something we have not seen in his first 3 seasons so far, where we're talking about All-Star the first year, 4 seed, awful in the postseason. Second year, awful season altogether, no postseason. Last year, All-Star again in the regular season, bad postseason. Now we need to see, at some point, for me to be proven correct and for the Knicks to get over the hump, he's going to have to be what he is in the regular season. In the postseason, I really think he can do it.
So you look at the Knicks' schedule so far this year, and I think they're now on pace for 51 or 52 wins, and the seeding, we'll see how that – I mean, listen, I said a couple of weeks ago, I think they can get as high as 2. I think they could catch Philly, certainly at 3, even though, Embiid's a beast. But they have played very few home games. It's very favorable for them to keep winning. But when you dive a little deeper into what they've done so far this year, and this is a credit, but it's also a concern, and it also goes back to Randle. They've beaten basically every team they're supposed to beat, all right? Mm-hmm. And they have very much struggled against the good teams. Now, why had they struggled against the good teams? Well, some of that was R.J. Barrett when he was still here and some of his inefficiencies, and some of it's circumstantial. Some of it's maybe a bad break. Some of it's, you just lose to a team that might be slightly better. But I submit that, I don't want to say a lot because that's unfair, but enough of that is attributable to Randle's sloppiness down the stretch.
Yeah,
it's a factor.
Look,
a big one.
Randle now is clearly their second best player on the best team that he's had around him. This is a different Knicks team. It's almost unfair to say, well, look what happened last year or 2 years ago. They're totally different now, especially since the trade of Anunoby. They knew they needed to change something up. It wasn't working with RJ and quickly. They did, and it's fit perfectly. They also are aware that they need to do a little bit more, whether it is veteran depth on the bench, whether it is a better 2-guard. That's something they're going to have to address. When they do that, I am fine with having their 2 best players, Brunson being number 1 and Julius Randle being number 2. BT and Sal on the Fan. We'll continue with your calls on the other side. We'll get into the Baseball Hall of Fame stuff. It's always fun to talk Baseball Hall of Fame and bitch and complain about the decisions and what goes into some of these voters. I mean, the writers, dude, they're all over the place with some of the stuff. We'll get into that a little bit later on as well. But keeping it to your Knicks with a big win last night